Are you searching for a deeper understanding of your faith?
Inspiring Philosophy is your go-to resource for exploring the rich tapestry of Christian thought.
From biblical archaeology to philosophy of mind, we dive into the topics that matter.
Our content bridges faith and understanding, offering insights into God's existence and the reliability of the New Testament.
Join a community where faith meets reason and discover the answers you've been seeking.
Inspiring Philosophy, where faith meets understanding.
Erase the name. Now every idol sounds the same. A generation on its knees, begging comfort, killing peace. Oh, this is the price of pride, dancing while the truth just dies. We fear the cross, embrace the chain. Our freedom's just another cage. In the ruins, a whisper stands, scarred and radiant, pierced hands. The silence breaks, the dark retreats. The king returns and thunder breaks. Where the last light fading under broken skies, chasing meaning in electric lights. But grace still burns where shadows fall. The dead arise, he conquers all. Take one last breath before the dawn takes back the
Yo, yo, yo. What's going on, everybody? Mike is gone, so I got the old crew back here together. Stephen and Eric from Testify. How are you guys doing?
Just keeping it as real as the streets, yo.
Doing good. It feels a little weird not having Mike, but I think we're gonna get through it. We might even do a better job without him. I don't know.
Mike doesn't let me dork out that much, so we don't have him holding us back. In that regard, I can talk about math if that makes sense. So today we're talking about the resurrection. We're going to take callers, all that fun stuff. I'm going to actually post the link to join in the chat now. Boom. And then hold on, let me pin that really quickly. Oh, I have to switch. But yeah, what your guys' descriptions, your guys' links are in the description already. So for everybody that is not following Eric or Steven, go follow their channels now. I will wait for that to happen. And then why don't you guys introduce yourself really quickly while I finish pinning the message for everybody.
Yeah. I am Eric, aka Testify, and yeah, most of my channel is just about like historical apologetics, arguments for the resurrection, historical reliability of the Gospels. I do like to talk about the argument for prophecy, argument for modern miracles. Made a few videos about Islam, but basically, if it's positive evidence for Christianity, I usually am talking about it. But a lot of people, I think, last year started following me because I just kind of went hardcore after Islam for like a year, and those videos seem to do really well. So there you go.
Cool.
Yeah.
Steven?
Deus Volt. So I'm the host of Facts podcast, and Facts is an acronym for Fathers, Apocryphal Canon, Text, and Scripture. So we cover anything in that relationship. I do a lot of work specifically in the 2nd and 3rd century era, especially even looking not only at Christianity in the apostolic churches, but also the different forms of heretical churches. And a lot of work on the Gnostic Gospels and Nag Hammadi. Did most of my PhD work on canonicity and textual criticism. So I focus most of my time particularly on the reliability of the text, particularly, and even defend it from a patristic standpoint. Some people take the manuscript data only. I hit a lot of things from the patristic side of things, how they're citing it. My dissertation particularly covered First Clement, along with the Didache and the longer recensions of Ignatius, and did the textual analysis for those, showing that they were citing a similar, if not same, New Testament as us and an Old Testament Septuagint, or whatever form of that may have been. So I studied a lot of that, and I actually finally put that in a better, more user-friendly form on my academia page, because it wasn't very friendly and it was mostly in Greek. And so I have it more in English, and I broke it down and color coordinated. It took me 2 years to finally get around to doing it, guys. But it's on the academia page, where I also just released a new article on the subject of the resurrection.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So today we're going to talk about the resurrection. Before we start, I have to give some announcements before we get into everything. And people are asking about the song in the chat, so I'll address that too. The first thing I want to say is we recently lost like a pretty big donor. They were given around $900 a month. And the reason why is just because they are going back to school to switch to the career field. So on the topic of the song, if you guys want access to some of those songs that we make, because that is a song that I made. It was originally an acoustic, like Midwest emo type word, like rally cry against secularism, if that makes sense. And then I just threw a recording of it into AI to make it into a metalcore song, and you guys can have access to that through the Patreon or through the Give Butter if you guys become supporters. And Patreon is also going to be getting buffed with more early content, and that also includes content from the Inspiring Philosophy Academy page as well. Speaking of which, tomorrow the Inspiring Philosophy Academy page has its first stream, 8 a.m. in the morning Central Time, and we're going to be talking about the Trinity. So come check out that, and a bunch of other stuff. So any if you guys have any more questions on that kind of stuff, let me know. Before we get into, because we already have a bunch of people jumping in to call, we're just going to go over some brief slides going over what we would call the maximalist case for the resurrection. And then you guys can kind of just jump in and interrupt whenever you want. Eric and Steven sound good?
Sounds
I was
good.
about to cough. Yeah, you're good.
Cool. So there's a few steps. I'm just trying to condense this and be quick, right? We're going to argue for something we would call something like the historical reportage model, the Gospels and Acts, and then from there we would extract certain data points to make our inferences about, what data supports the resurrection versus any other competing theory. The other thing we have to consider is stuff about miracles and probabilities, and then after all that is done, then we go into something that we would just call rival hypothesis comparison. So the historical reportage model, all we're really saying is that the Gospels and Acts were written by people close to the times and place of Jesus, and that they set out to write a history of Jesus by giving accurate details without feeling the freedom to make up or change any of the historical facts. Eric, Steven?
Yeah, I want to comment on that for a minute, because one of the things that I thought about recently, and I just hosted on my channel a debate between Jonathan Sheffield and Bart Ehrman on the subject of the resurrection. And one of the things that continually surprises me with Dr. Ehrman's hypothesis of the Gospels, he would still date all four of them to the first century. And mathematically, even if he's right, Mark is 70 AD, Luke and Matthew are somewhere in the 80s, and then John's in the 90s, because I've heard him say those exact dates. We still have, within human possibility, living eyewitnesses around that could have been, even if you don't think it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, even if you don't think it's who they say they are, there are enough people to have lived through the 70s and the 80s of that time who could live to tell some sort of eyewitness testimony, even if you don't believe it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Of course, two of them are claiming, from what we know of history, two of them were never there anyway. Luke and Mark were probably not even involved in Jesus' ministry. But the thing is that bothers me is, it's like, well, these are unreliable because nobody that was there wrote about it. But yet we can still affirm, even in a skeptical side of things, that the Gospels were still first century. At what point could they still not be eyewitness based, or even be by people or communities that were alive to see or hear about these things? It's kind of an interesting perspective. Like, it's so simple, but yet I've never thought about it before until I heard him in the debate recently. It's like, wait, you still think these are first century?
Yeah.
So why is that out of the realm of possibility?
That's why people like Eric and I, especially, I'm speaking for you, Eric, now, sorry, but we get so uppity about that specific point that they did not feel the freedom to change facts and all this other stuff, because so much of the critical scholarship is going to be based off of well, this is happening in the gospel because this author's making up this thing to get Jesus here and blah, 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 when there's better explanations on the table for all of that stuff. So we have a 6-hour playlist arguing for gospel reliability on the channel. Go check this out. But here are just a few things. I finally have the ability to actually talk about this. I have a paper that's in peer review. It's been in peer review for about a year now. And I worked with Jason Wilson and Luke Vandewe on another onomastic congruence paper. Onomastics is just like the study of names. And the basic idea is that we tested a bunch of data and did statistical testing to show how name distributions and how those match with the frequency of the name distributions that were actually the case in different geographies and chronologies. If it lines up, it's a good marker for authenticity, and if it doesn't, it's a good marker that it's not. So, for instance, in one of our figures here, you can actually see that Jewish names occurrences in different sources. Well, the fictional or semi-fictional sources cluster near to the left of the threshold here, and that means that the name distributions are actually failing the test, which shows us what? Again, that name distribution actually matching what's the case is a marker for historical reportage. And you can see that by contrast in the historical texts like Josephus and the Gospels and Acts, those fall to the right of this distribution, and it shows that name historicity actually fits really well. We actually further did this as well with Roman names, which this was a huge thing, but you'll see the same exact pattern here. Historical sources, such as Suetonius, Plutarch, Cicero, they're all going to the right of the threshold, and the fictional works tend to cluster towards the left and fail. And then here's just kind of a mix of the p-values and all that stuff. I'm not going to bore you guys with a bunch of math stuff here, but for the Gospels and Acts, you can see that they're all passing. So that's one thing. Other things are going to be undesigned coincidences, external confirmations, the fact that they get hard things right, stuff like that. I'm just trying to go through this fast, Eric and Steven, so cut me off, by the way, if you... one idea of an undesigned coincidence is the Joseph and Archelaus thing. Eric, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I could do that. So in Matthew 2, 19 through 22, it talks about Joseph. Basically, he hears that Archelaus was reigning, and he decides to, instead of going back to Bethlehem, he decides to move his family to Nazareth. So it's just kind of this comment, throwaway comment there. And so, but we actually find out from Josephus that after Herod's death, we find out that Archelaus, he ruled Judea, Antipas ruled Galilee. But what's interesting, the kind of the background is basically Herod, before he died, did something unpopular, and there was some people that were killed in the temple, and there were some Jews that were still angry about it. There were some Roman soldiers that were in the temple the following year after Herod had died, and Archelaus had become like the new sheriff or whatever in town, and they were ticked about what had happened. Basically, the previous year there was some like Roman shields, and some Jews were like, "That's idolatry." They took it down, and they got killed. So these people were angry. They start kind of fussing with some Roman soldiers. A group of them end up picking some rocks and kill a couple of Roman guards. Archelaus gets wind of this, and he sends his full army to surround the temple on horseback. And he said nobody can enter the temple, and nobody can come out of the temple. And I think it was like 3,000. 3,000 people were slaughtered in the temple. And then on top of that, he cancels Passover. He tells everybody go home. So you can imagine people from all over the diaspora, including there's a pretty big Jewish group in like Alexandria, Egypt. So Joseph is heading back to Judea, and you have these people heading back to Egypt, and they're probably bringing that news. And Joseph, he's not stupid. He's probably thinking to himself like, "Hey, I just narrowly escaped one homicidal maniac. Now his son is on the throne, and he's showing himself to be every bit the homicidal maniac. I think I'll take my chances with Antipas rather than Archelaus." And Archelaus was a bad dude. He ends up like never really getting certified as some kind of a king. He only lasts, I think, like 10 years. And what's kind of interesting too is if you think about it, Luke talks about in the infancy narratives that when Jesus goes to the temple, and like they lose Jesus, he's in the temple, when he's 12, 10 years later, right? And so like they waited all the way to bring Jesus to the temple, at least from what it looks like in the Gospels,
about 10 years.
a whole 10 years once Archelaus had already been banished to Gaul. So there you go.
Yeah, pretty based. Other external confirmations, if you guys look at scholars like Colin Heemer, he has 84 confirmations in this book called The Book of Acts in Setting of Hellenistic History. Here's just 5 of them. The basic idea is that the Gospels and Acts get a bunch of things that are really obscure, that are hard to get right, unless you were people that were actually like, a companion of Paul traveling with him. Now... figured you would like this picture, Eric.
Yeah, there he is.
Somebody might go, okay, well, miracles don't happen. And we can tackle this. We can talk about this for a long time, but I'm just going to go over 2 cases that I think are pretty strong. One is going to be a case report called Instantaneous Resolution of Juvenile Macular Degeneration Blindness After Proximal Intercessory Prayer. So the basic idea is the subject's eyesight was 20/400, and from the paper it says this case predates the availability of much of the ophthalmic testing now used for diagnosis. In the 1960s, an ophthalmoscope and or slit lamp were available to examine the retina. Medical records from the ophthalmic examination in 1960 indicate uncorrected vision was 7/200 in each eye, roughly corresponding to finger counting vision only, and thus legal blindness. Here's some of the medical examination stuff. And January 29th, 1971, a school for blind people recorded the subject for her uncorrected vision as finger counting on the right and hand motion on the left. This is the medical documentation again. The right could be slightly improved with correction over to 20/400. She had extratropia, and she was diagnosed with macular degeneration and declared legally blind. Then, the paper says one evening prior to bed, she regained her vision instantaneously after receiving proximal intercessory prayer from her husband. This experience occurred after approximately 13 years of blindness. At the close of the prayer, his wife opened her eyes and saw her husband kneeling in front of her, which was her first clear visual perception after 13 years of blindness. This is again from the paper. The first documentation of her visual acuity after this incident was on a prescription pad note showing an improvement in the VA. In 1974, her visual acuity was 20/100 without correction. This is a dramatic increase of 400% in visual acuity, which we don't have a single like instance of. We don't have a parallel to this case. So again, we can just ask, what's more likely? This was a miraculous healing, some sort of naturalistic theory. That would have to be one of the mix of one of the following: lying, mistaken, or some unknown natural law. But you have to keep in mind that we have all the medical records. There's this 13 years of blindness. There's no naturalistic parallels. And then on any unknown natural laws that you might want to like point to here might actually contradict the current science. And there's a religious context to this healing. This is the last one. Another one is Chris Gunderson. I think, no, it was me and Caleb that interviewed him, Eric.
Yeah.
Not you and me. On Inspiring Philosophy Academy, there's actually an interview with this guy that you can go check out. But at 2 weeks old, he experienced vomiting and he was diagnosed with gastroparesis. This is a thing you cannot heal from. There's no surgery to fix this. So he had to get a J tube and a G tube and a bunch of other feeding tubes placed in him. And he had this for 16 years. While being prayed for one day, he actually experienced pulsing and contraction and sensations in his abdomen. And that night, Chris ate his first oral meal without any complications. The primary care physician and a gastroenterologist couldn't explain this. And the tubes were actually surgically removed 4 months later after the healing, which is documented. They waited the 4 months because they wanted to make sure that this wasn't like some weird thing. So they're like, you can go ahead and keep eating, but we're going to keep the tubes in for 4 months. And if this keeps going well, we'll take them out. And that's what happened. And then these are just quotes from the doctor's reports from Chris Gunderson's case. I'm not going to read them all verbatim, but the basic idea is these are the doctors attesting to what happened. So again, what's more likely? That this was a miraculous healing, some naturalistic theory. And again, keep in mind, we have the medical records. This is 18 years. There's no naturalistic parallels to this again. Any unknown natural laws would contradict the current science and religious context of the healing. And these are issues you just can't fake out of nowhere. So when it comes to the resurrection, we have the Gospels as genuine historical reportage. And we have therefore access to what the alleged eyewitnesses of the alleged risen Christ actually said they experienced. And we also have a precedent for miracles. So with all this together, I would argue that we have about 21 unique eyewitness testimonies, not including the appearance of the 500 in 1 Corinthians, across a 40-day time span, with multiple levels of details and interdependence amongst these accounts. These were all proclaimed immediately in anticipation of suffering, during voluntary suffering, and this includes embarrassing testimony and includes the testimony of skeptics as well. And the other thing that I like to point out, I don't know if you've ever talked about this, Stephen or Eric, but I like to point out that we actually have a contrastive example too. So in other words, like we know what it would look like in the ancient world if you had a Messiah figure, quote unquote, who died and stayed dead. We have tons of those actually, right? One example is Simon Bar Kokhba. He died, his movement died out. And we have all these other examples here. So why is it the case that with Jesus we have a different example as well? So that's the speed run of the maximalist case. Anything you guys want to add in?
Boom, skibbity.
Cool. All right, well, let's take our first caller then. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
All right, Tyler, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, so I've been curious for a while. What is your, if you just picked a random person off the street, what is your prior probability that that person would rise from the dead?
A random person off the street?
Yeah.
Not very high, probably. Why?
Well, okay, so, and then what is your prior that Jesus rose from the dead? and what
I would
accounts
say,
for that
yeah,
difference?
it depends on what you're allowing to go in the background knowledge. So, for instance, I have 2 miracles that I just talked about that I think actually happened, that happened in Jesus' name, in the religious context of Christianity, and that there's also miracles as well that I would think about
Yeah.
too, right?
You-
And so that if that's in my background knowledge, the prior probability that Jesus rose from the dead is going to be fairly high.
Well, sure, but that
Also,
would be in the background
hold on.
knowledge of.
Let
Go
me
ahead.
more to the
Go ahead.
point of the background knowledge is also like Old Testament prophecy and Jesus' own self claims.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, Eric's, it wouldn't be a random person. He'd been telling them this whole time, I'm going to Jerusalem, I'm going to die, and on the 3rd day I'm going to rise. He even likened himself to Old Testament prophecies, likening himself to Jonah. As he was in the belly of the fish for 3 days, 3 nights, so shall the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth 3 days, 3 nights, but he will rise again. The disciples didn't understand why he kept saying that, but he had been predicting his own. There's also Old Testament insight, as Eric said. So to me, I don't think we can make that kind of comparison, because it wouldn't be a random person who, if that person came in and kept saying over and over again, hey, I'm gonna resurrect from the dead in about a month. I'm going to go to this city. I'm going to get killed there. I'm going to rise from the dead. And we all like, well, that's crazy. And then we see him literally raise somebody from the dead, showing he has the power of resurrection from the dead, where Jesus did that on more than one occasion. Or he took a man who was lame his whole life and caused him to walk, or took a guy who was blind and just spit on the ground and made mud and put it on his eyes and told him to go wash. And all of a sudden he can see, and he's being tried by the religious leaders as who did this to you. Once you see all of those things, it's pretty easy to believe that when Jesus says, I'm going to rise from the dead, and he had proved by all these other things that he had the ability and power to do that, it wouldn't be as random as somebody I picked up on the street.
So is it just, I'm hearing that because he predicted it, and because other people like centuries before had talked about a person rising from the dead, that's what changes the prior probability.
And he proved it. He resurrected people from the dead. He showed power over sickness, disease, and nature. And if you can do that, what limit do you have of rising from the dead? If you can tell the wind to stop, you can cause the ocean and the waves to stop. You can take a man who was lame from birth and make him walk normal. You can take a guy who's been dead for 4 days and bring him out of a tomb. Why would you say it's no longer probable that could happen for him?
Well, sure. Okay, so that is the prior probability for Jesus, but for just a random person, what is like? Do you have any like factor of difference between this? Is it like 1,000 times less likely? Like,
well, okay, let's do this. What is your point? Because if we have a bunch of reasons for putting Jesus in a particular reference class, and then going, given the background knowledge, we have good reasons for saying that the prior probability is not too low for the data that we have to overcome the low prior. What is pointing to a random person and saying that the prior for them is going to be really low doing to help get lower the posterior probability of the resurrection for Jesus?
Well, so there's nothing pointing to a random person. That's why I'm saying random specifically.
I think, Tyler, we're just asking what's the argument? Like, are you skeptical of the resurrection?
Yes. Well, yeah, I have
okay,
a complicated relationship with religion, but yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Well, besides any of,
I'm so, and by the way, I'm sympathetic to that, Tyler.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We just ask because we want to know.
Yeah, no, fair enough. No, it's
so what's your main objection to the resurrection? Is it just because the prior probability is just so low that you don't think?
I think if I'm honest, it's basically every step of the maximalist case is like one that I can't follow on, but go ahead.
Is that all built on the fact that you think the prior for miracles is low?
No, I just also happen to think the prior for miracles is low, but I think like the probability of the like historical reportage model being true is also relatively low.
Why?
So stuff like I know there are reasons that you don't believe this is that this is that this makes it improbable. But stuff like the flight to Egypt being in like Luke and not in Matthew, that feels really surprising to me,
So
given that they weren't. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. No, I only cut you off because it sounded like you wanted to go to another example, and I wanted to just do one thing at a time if that's fair.
Yeah,
So
no, that's the only one I've got.
yeah,
at the
okay,
moment.
fair enough. So I actually talked to Alex O'Connor about this, by the way, too. And a lot of people like to say like Matthew invented the flight to Egypt. Why? Oh, because we have insert argument from silence here between Matthew and Luke. And oh, well, Matthew tells us why he invents this prophecy to place to put Jesus in Egypt, right? Now here's the counter to this. One is going to be we kind of went over the undesigned coincidence about the flight to Egypt in the beginning slides, right?
Mhm.
So that's going to be positive evidence for the historical, like the historicity of the flight to Egypt, right? Does that make sense? For
Yeah,
that
I
part?
see where you're going with it. So this,
Is it just that
here's
it's
another
surprising
question I
that
had
Luke?
for a while.
And
Is it
then
just surprising to you that Luke omits it? Is that the main thing?
That is with the flight to Egypt. I think that it's that I find that surprising, but
okay.
it's also that go. Yeah.
Yeah, let me just add one more thing in here too, because I think people don't understand Jewish literature enough to understand what's happening with Matthew. In the Second Temple period, there's a type of interpretive like hermeneutics called pesher, and you can actually find this in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have things called the Isaiah Pesherim.
I think I listened to you talk about this on the Debate Teacher Reacts video, if I remember right.
I have no clue what you're talking about.
It's
cool.
I can't remember the guy's name, but Wise Disciple.
can't remember
Nate
it
Sala.
either.
Nate
Yes,
Sala.
Wise
Yeah.
Disciple.
Nate,
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you know about this, right? And that's what Matthew's doing, and I think you can actually see Matthew doing this quite a lot throughout his gospel. And so, like, the question is, like, how are you going to demarcate between the hypothesis that Jesus is just doing a type of midrash, which is pesher, not inventing stuff, but just going in line with typical Jewish hermeneutics and taking the historical things that are happening and then looking back to find patterns in the Old Testament that you can actually fit those historical things into. I think on total evidence, it seems a lot more likely that Luke did omit this, but that Matthew's not inventing this. And at least, I don't know about you, Stephen or Eric here, but for me, Luke omitting this seems to be right in line and very consistent with the historical reportage model and traditional authorship. Matthew would have had access to people like Mary and to the people that would have actually known about these stories, where Luke is what? He's a follower of Paul, and Paul was not one of the original disciples or the people that actually walked with Jesus or anything like that. And so why would Luke be the type of person that has the privileged access that Matthew would have had to such that he would actually want to write about this?
The only thing that I would add is like omission is not, in a way, it's still kind of an argument from silence. And so like, sure, it might be surprising to us, but like, you have to still look at all the other positive data points for the Gospels, for the book of Acts, for which there are, in my opinion, in terms of like undesigned coincidences and external confirmations and different things like that, that just far exceeds any sort of like surprising omission. It's just kind of like, well, there's all these other data points. And so just because I have this kind of like hang up of like, why wouldn't they mention that? It just seems like, especially when arguments from silence are already kind of precarious to begin with, it just, to me, it's kind of like bypassing all the positive evidence for that. And that just seems to me like kind of a not the best way to bet, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So of course I'm nowhere near as, I'm sorry, Stephen, did you have something?
So let me kind of weigh in on the Luke Matthew debacle. I found it interesting that we've assumed that Luke and Matthew are reporting the same time, because I actually think they're a couple years off from each other. So in addition to what Than had said about Matthew also loves the technique of compression. He likes to take massive stories and bring them into a smaller segment. And it looks like he's saying a lot of things happened in a single period of time when actually they didn't. He does this with his parables. He does this with his healing miracles, etc.
Sure.
I actually don't think that Matthew is reporting at the same timeline as Luke. I think Luke is reporting Jesus' actual birth. I think Matthew is actually going a couple of years after that. Common observation that you could look at is, for example, when the angels appeared to the shepherds in Luke's gospel, they said, "You shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes." If you look at the terminology there, it's an infant. If you look at the idea when the wise men come in Matthew, for example, when the wise men are coming, it says that no longer actually I think we've done this to ourselves because we put the nativity scene where everybody's kind of all together.
I know.
And
That's true. That annoys me.
But it's actually not true, because if you actually look what happens, he was found in a manger in a stable. And then if you go to Matthew, he's in a house. And actually the word there is different. He says that they talk about the child, which is more of a term for a toddler. Somebody that's an adolescent, but they're not an infant anymore. We can honestly, to me, Matthew and Luke are talking about almost a 2 to 3 year gap of time. To say that what happened in the flight of Egypt couldn't have happened because Luke doesn't talk about it, but Luke's not even focusing on that timeline. I think Luke is focusing on his initial birth, goes over to his 12-year-old years in the temple, which is what Eric was talking about earlier. Matthew is focusing on the whole entire virgin birth to fulfill Isaiah, and this flight to Egypt to show like this, out of Egypt I will call my son, going back to the minor prophets, the 12 in Hosea. There's this concept here that he's doing that goes back to what Than was saying. But even if we just look at the internal text, I think Matthew is talking about a child that is in a toddler age, not an infancy age. I think we have 2 to 3 years difference between Luke and Matthew. So of course, Luke wouldn't have given that story. He's not focused on the same stage of life that Matthew did. That's have you thought about that, Tyler? Like they're not even talking about the same, like you said, you hate putting them in the manger together.
It's certainly a possibility. I don't think that's one that I've heard before, but that's a valid interpretation of it. I'm nowhere near a scholar, but when I read Matthew and see the parallels he draws between what he calls prophecy in, I guess it would be the Septuagint, and take something that Jesus' life to draw that parallel, some of those seem extremely tenuous. I'm going to fail if you ask me for examples at the moment, but that the way that reads to me just seems so much more plausible as constructed to look like prophecy than historical reportage.
Yeah, I mean, to answer some of that, I would say the things that you're mentioning, I know which references. I mean, Dan already mentioned like Hosea 11:1, right? Or it talks about like Jeremiah 31:15, where it talks about, Rachel is weeping for her children and refuses to be comforted and things like that. And so you see these, and then of course there's the accusation that Matthew just like totally butchers how he reads Isaiah 7:14 and basically invents a virgin birth and yada yada yada, so forth and so on.
I don't think that Matthew invented that, for the record.
Well, good.
Based.
There you go. Based. But anyways, these texts, if you think about it, they're not used to be messianic text from what we see in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Targums, the Talmud, or any pre-Christian Jewish literature, or even like any early post-Christian Jewish literature. So if a Jewish writer is inventing a messianic story, he would have probably had better text in order to like choose from. But these passages, I think they do make sense if real events came first. And Matthew later saw Israel's story echoed in Jesus's life. And so even like somebody like Mark Goodacre, and you admitted like, well, I don't think that Matthew invented the virgin birth out of misreading Isaiah. He says that he thinks that this is more like prophecy historicized versus like people just reading prophecies and making up stories. Is he thinks that Matthew does have information about Jesus, or at least traditions about Jesus. And he's just pulling from the Old Testament and saying, oh, okay, well, this is kind of a cool parallel to something that actually happened. And so then versus like, I'm reading Hosea 11. Well, that's got to be about Jesus, like that's not something that was considered to be a messianic prophecy to begin with. If he's making up a story, like why not use different prophecies that like actually would make more sense?
So if you're okay sticking with the flight to Egypt example for just a second, I'd be curious to know if y'all think that say Luke did not know about the flight to Egypt, or just chose not to.
I
chose not to add it.
I would say it was not a part of his treatise. He was not going for the same thing Matthew. Their audiences are very different, for one. Matthew's audience would be more intrigued by these prophecies and these terms that Than and Eric are talking about, because Matthew is writing to a converted Jewish group from what we know of its historical narrative. Luke is writing to Eastern part of Turkey Christians that are in Paul's journey. Gentiles don't have the same attachment to some of these passages that, particularly Eric was just talking about. And there was a lot of nuances to things that, like where Matthew even talks about, he will be called a Nazarene, right? And it's like, well, this is prophecy. And then you go to your Old Testament, you're like, well, no, there's not. There's actually a lot of Jewish idiom. There's a lot of idea here that Jews would have loved and would have found very interesting and convincing. Matthew is appealing to that very narrative. Luke's not interested in that narrative as much, because even in their lineage differences, we could talk about how Matthew starts with David and then says Abraham, which is chronologically wrong because he doesn't care about the order. And then he starts at Abraham. Luke goes back to Adam. Luke's trying to show that Jesus is the savior of humanity. Whereas Matthew is emphasizing his point. He tells you that he's going to prove that Jesus was the seed of Abraham, but he is also the rightful king and son of David. So it's taken to 2 Samuel 7. And that in his ministry, he was going to bring about the eternal kingdom, that where he is, he will save his people from their sins. So this is a Jewish gospel, if you would, in some ways, where it is written to converted Jews. And so he's appealing to things that Gentiles would not have even picked up on. They would not even known how to look at it properly in the Old Testament. And kind of going back to even the timeline here, the word that Luke uses, he uses the word breathos in Greek. And he's the only one that really utilizes that word at the infancy stage. And if you're wondering if that means infancy, earlier in chapter 1, he talks about the baby leaping in Elizabeth's womb, being John the Baptist. He uses the same word, breathos, there. Whereas in Matthew, for example, again, with the story of the wise men, the child, the paideon, is now just an adolescent, somebody at a very, very young age, could have been a toddler. So there's so many elements going to this where Luke is highlighting certain things for his audience. Matthew's highlighting others for his audience, and they just don't have the same purpose. And we see that even in their lineages leading into Jesus. I don't know if you guys want to add to that, but
well, we should give Tyler.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, what do you what do you think about what I'm saying on that? The purpose of the writer and its original audience will dictate the direction they take these stories.
Yeah, no question. I think that's pretty much a given in how I read the Gospels. Would you? It might just be speculation. I think it is speculation, I guess. But do you think that he just chose not to? Do you think he knew about the flight to Egypt, even if he chose not to add it for whatever reason?
Well, there's probably a lot of things Jesus did at 6 years old and 8 years old, and 9 years old, and 11 years old that we don't have anything about, that neither writer decided to include. I would have liked to know what Jesus was like as a 7-year-old. I mean, I've raised 2 children who are 12.
Read the infancy gospel; it's right there.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
he was cursing kids, don't you?
Turning clay into butterflies. I mean, we've got all kinds of good stuff there, right?
Yeah.
And apparently, yeah, some people are saying he is a Muslim too, and some of the
my.
Some people.
Alhamdulillah.
Can I ask another question, or do y'all need to move on to another caller?
Well, we'll move on here in a second. If it's a quick question, go ahead though.
I don't think it is particularly quick. I wanted to know if the synoptic problem lowers your credence at all for the value of undesigned coincidences, even if it's like 0.5%. Is that budget at all?
That I can't answer that question, because I have another paper in the works right now doing a statistical analysis on undesigned coincidences, and we actually tackle that particular question you ask.
Okay.
So I can say this: I don't think it undermines the value but I can't tell you why yet because I have to exercise patience with academia
you,
before I
Than.
bring that stuff.
Good for you.
Gotcha.
Is that fair, Tyler?
Good luck with it. Good. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, looking forward to reading the paper then when it comes out.
Would you
Thanks
say,
for your
Steven?
questions. Thanks for your questions, Tyler. They're good questions.
Yeah, no, they're good questions for sure.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Appreciate it.
Later, brother.
Be good.
Good to meet you.
All right. We'll bring on one more guy and then we'll get into some super chats, guys. Paul,
Oh, hey, man.
what's going on?
What's going on?
You know, you said you were in the chat earlier before the stream
I was.
started, saying you had a few questions.
Yeah. So, I was up here before last time you did. I think it was the same topic, resurrection.
Yeah, I was on the resurrection, and then Mike got mad at us because we were talking about math.
Yeah, and I thought that was really compelling stuff. That was like,
Hey, man.
Mike's not here. Math it up, Than.
Oh, man.
yeah, hey, man, if
Math
you
it
want
up.
to. Well, that's kind of what I was gonna get into because my kind of main objection. I know we touched on this a little bit last time. Is just, I mean, I'm not all into the hip philosophical jargon that you guys are into, but the whole probabilistic aspect of everything, and just kind of the idea that if there is a naturalistic explanation of the events that occurred during Jesus' life and whatever happened with the resurrection and beliefs of the resurrection at the time, if there is a naturalistic explanation, which obviously there is, even if it's not as harmonious with the evidence as just saying the resurrection happened, and I get like the whole Occam's razor thing, but even if it's less harmonious with the evidence, doesn't it just make more logical sense to say that's probably what happened?
Yeah. No, and that's going to be for two reasons. One is something I touched on the last time you called in. So remember, when we want to assess the posterior probability of the resurrection relative to the non-resurrection hypotheses, you can't just isolate the not R space. Do you know what I'm saying when I say the not R space? Like,
No.
totally fine. Not R is just going to be the umbrella for the species of hypotheses, not resurrection.
Okay.
Right. So when there's this thing called a probability space, right? So imagine a square, and the square represents 100% of the probability space, and we're trying to figure out how much of that square, right? If the square is the posterior probability, how much of that square does the resurrection hypothesis occupy, and how much of that square do the not resurrection hypotheses occupy, right? That's what we're trying to figure out. Whatever chunk of that square is bigger is more probable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is you can't actually fill out that square until you have all of the not R categories or like types or subspecies of the not resurrection hypotheses. And that's important because now all of a sudden what ends up happening is you want to get your Bayes factor. Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, totally fine. You were up here talking about Bayes so last time, so I just want to make sure I'm not assuming too much.
Yeah,
That's all.
you were talking about it, not me.
I got excited probably. I'm sorry. Okay, so we want to get our Bayes factor. The Bayes factor is going to be the probability of the evidence given the resurrection hypothesis divided by the probability of the evidence given your not R hypothesis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a ratio of the probabilities. But in order to get a full posterior probability and actually fill out that square, you have to assess the Bayes factor of of all the non-resurrection hypotheses on the table, not just one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I guess like the thing that I'm a little bit confused about is how we're determining whether or not something is probable and how probable it is. So like,
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
let's table that for just a second because there's a bigger foundational problem happening before we even get to that. And that is under the not R hypothesis space. There's a hypothesis, for instance, that Jesus did not rise from the dead, and Paul just made it up, and that's it, right? But then in there's also Paul made it up and Thomas made it up. Paul and Thomas and you just keep on going through all the possible worlds that could have, in principle, have originated the belief in the resurrection and all the testimonies that we see. Does that make sense?
No, that does. Yeah.
That is a lot of different theories, right?
Yep.
And the thing is, not all of those theories make the evidence very probable or explain the evidence very well, right? So then what ends up happening is, even if you have one really good naturalistic explanation of the resurrection data, it's going to get pulled down because the probability of the not resurrection space is going to be a weighted average of all the other. I'm sorry, not the probability. The probability of the evidence given the not resurrection space is going to be a weighted average of all those non-resurrection hypotheses put together.
Why would it
That is a
be...
math. I know you're about to ask me, and that's a math question that we probably just can't get into because I'm gonna have to like draw stuff for you. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're willing to trust me on that,
Okay,
for
all
now,
right, fair enough.
yeah.
But then what I would ask then is why do we take? I mean, you were talking about weighted probabilities and things like that, but doesn't the idea of Jesus being God, of such a, something that's so untestable, something so unfounded historically, something technically impossible to prove, besides the historical, the evidence that we have, does that not bring the weight of that claim down in and of itself? If you know what I mean?
Not by my lights, because I actually think theism I think theism predicts an incarnation.
Really? Just
Yeah.
theism in general, or
Well,
like,
okay, so the way I draw out my theistic
Abrahamic?
predictions is going to be like, I think generically you can say something. By the way, Eric and Steven, if you want to jump in, you can. But generically, I'm going to say, like, generic theism is going to make a prediction that's going to be vague, and it's going to be something like God's going to create the best possible kind of world, right? But that doesn't answer the question of what is the best possible kind of world, right? To answer that question, you're going to have to like conditionalize on different axiologies or like value theories, right? So, for instance, you can compare one value theory being hedonism, and then let's just say we'll gesture towards a vague value theory called Christian ethics or Christian virtue ethics or something like that. Okay. So, if you have theism plus hedonism, what kind of world are we going to expect to see? Sex,
Well,
drugs, and rock and roll, and that's it, right? Like, right? But if you have an axiology that says like growing in virtue and character and collaborating from the creator to the creation are all good things that are worth pursuing and stuff like that. It seems to me that a God would want to create a world and actually choose to become incarnate, because we can ourselves just pick up on certain goods that attest to that thing that's worth pursuing, right? So, for instance, like today I was teaching my kids how to do push-ups, right? Which one of these two scenarios is better? The one by which I just tell them what to do, or the one where I actually get down on the floor and start doing push-ups with them as I'm teaching them,
Yeah, obviously the second option.
right? And so from there we can extract like, well, we live in a world where such a value is a thing that we can experience and attest and fits with our intuitions. So why would it be the case that God wouldn't choose to become incarnate and do a similar type of action?
No, I mean that's a good point. I mean, although at the same time, like, because the thing is, everything that you're saying, I think makes complete sense if you operate under the framework, like under a theistic framework. But why should I believe necessarily in a theistic framework? Why shouldn't I just deny that outright? Because if that isn't the case, like if theism is false, then obviously the resurrection didn't happen. And that in and of itself is a question, right? It's a huge question. It's an unprovable
Were
question. I'm not
you
saying that makes it false, but it's its own thing. And so let's say that we determine, okay, theism is true. Then we have to determine, okay, if theism is true, then the God of the Old Testament is true. The God of I guess the Torah is
Mhm.
true. And then Jesus has to be that God and everything else that you said. And I guess it logically flows, right? If theism is true, then I guess everything you're saying kind of logically flows into um, the resurrection. But again, with what you were saying before about the whole, to be honest, I'm not going to be able to repeat it, but the whole square analogy that you
Don't worry
made,
about it. Yeah, yeah.
um,
I
that
think I had you mistaken for somebody else, by the way. There was another guy that came in and talked about stuff that was similar to yours, what
really,
you were asking. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
So
remember,
don't worry about it.
I swear you
I think I
talked
just
about
put those
something.
2 together because something you
Okay.
just said made me realize there was a different person.
Oh,
So
okay. Interesting.
that's all. Keep going.
Oh,
Because
no, yeah, that's
if
crazy.
you're because if you brought up the Old Testament, and I remember last time somebody brought up issues of the Old Testament, like the war text and stuff like that. Um,
Well, yeah, I mean, last time I was kind of talking about, like, for example, I don't know if I brought this specifically up last time, but the God of the Old Testament seems to be rather obsessed with blood sacrifice. It just doesn't
yeah.
seem. It seems like something that.
Have you watched those streams that we told you and the videos that we told you to
Yeah,
watch?
actually, I did watch. Which ones did I watch? I forget which ones I watched, but well, you continue. You got.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, 'cause at the end of the day, 'cause for the sake of the stream too, we wanna just try to keep things narrowed a little bit. So,
Yeah,
like, I'm
resurrection.
happy to talk about the Old Testament, and I'm happy to talk about the war text and all this other stuff. I'm actually really passionate about that, but we wanna try to stay focused on the resurrection.
Yeah.
So, let's just say I was able to give you an account of all these Old Testament passages and all this other stuff that actually paints this picture, right? That the God of the Old Testament is actually rather anti-war, and the point of the war text and the narratives in the war text is actually um, basically saying this is what happens when humanity tries to take justice into their own hands and doesn't submit to God's
Oh, I
covenantal
do
plan.
remember. No, I do remember you talking about that. I
Okay,
remember that.
yeah, yeah, okay, great. Because I actually think that that is the picture of the Old Testament God. It's a
Yeah, no, that.
reluctant war God.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that is fair. That is fair. But no, yeah,
so
but I mean,
if
again,
we
like,
if that's the picture that's painted, what does that do then to your assessment?
no, yeah, I mean, it's, I guess that goes into a lot of different like lines of thought, like ethics and logic and all of those things. And I think that the way that you explained it, especially last time, I remember, was a little more in depth and it made a lot of sense. But but anyway, yeah, like you said, not to get off on a tangent with that stuff, but
Mhm.
yeah, we could talk about that. Like I guess, like you said, in a private chat or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah, just,
resurrection.
if you wanna yeah, because like, if you wanna get into more details on some of this stuff, join our Discord server and ping me in the Discord server, and then I'm happy to talk because I'm sure the questions you have are questions other people have,
Yeah,
right?
hundred
And
percent.
so it'll be helpful for them. I think that'll be the best way to do it. Just tag me, and if I don't get back to you, it's because 'cause I'm working, and just tag me again. Don't be afraid to bother me.
Yeah, no worries. All right, yeah, no. So yeah, my main kind of thing that I wanted to bring up in this about the resurrection was just kind of that idea about the if
If
it's
there is a naturalistic theory, that
why
thing.
wouldn't we
Yeah,
accept that
I
theory?
mean
But
yeah, there's a bunch of reasons, like I said. So one is that mathy reason, and the other is just because I don't actually think that the prior probability for the resurrection of Jesus specifically is going to be that low because I think we have a lot of really good reasons for thinking that Jesus did rise from the dead, even before we look at the New Testament data.
well, okay. So I mean, what about for example, I've heard this objection, and I'm sure you've heard. I'm not reinventing the wheel here or anything, but the um the disciples and Paul and whoever, obviously a combination of things like they genuinely believed that Jesus was the Messiah. Genuinely, clearly something happened, right? And so couldn't it be possible that y- and this accounts for the martyrdom and it accounts for the beliefs and it also accounts for, I think, some of the prophetical fulfillment, if that's the correct terminology there. But if they believed that Jesus was the Messiah and essentially believed in doing whatever it took to convey that to other people, even if it meant embellishing the truth. You know what I mean?
Eric.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
no,
was
I
gonna
mean
see if Eric or Steven want to jump
yeah, I
in.
was gonna
I've been
say the
talking a while.
maximalist case would probably rule that out because there's the context of suffering, and so it's just like, why would you make up these stories to, first of all, your leader was crucified, and then you have Paul who's crucifying, persecuting Christians. Stephen gets stoned as basically like a warning shot to all the other saints of Jerusalem. You have these people, at least according to Acts, who are you have Peter, James, and John who are called on the carpet. You have the 12 who eventually are like threatened and I think even beaten and different things like that. And then on it goes. It's just this like, why would you make up something that you know is patently like false just because you really want to believe it that hard? It just doesn't seem like a very good explanation.
I don't know if they necessarily would have had to believe that Jesus rose from the dead in order for them to be willing to die for it. If they believed that he was the Messiah, if they believed that, even if they believed that he was God, they could be willing to die for it even if he didn't resurrect. So if he didn't resurrect, they could still have...
He didn't resurrect. Why would you believe that he's that? And then
people believe some crazy things. I don't know. People.
Were you here? Were you here when I went over the slides in the beginning?
Yeah.
So we know what it would look like for an ancient person around this time to have somebody that they believed was the Messiah and die, right? The movement would just die out.
Well, maybe it didn't die out because of the resurrection. The embellishment of what happened, you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
right. So then, but then
this
is the thing that so the thing that you'd be positing then is Jesus died and stayed dead, and this person made this up, and this person made this up, and this person made up this claim, and like, and on and on and on and on and on and on it
well,
goes.
it's one claim. It's one claim. The claim is that he rose from the dead.
It's
and then,
one claim.
But how many people you have to posit that are actually lying then?
But
well, how many people are? How many written? This is actually a genuine question because I don't know the answer to this. But how many people who claimed that Jesus rose from the dead do we have written accounts from that were actual eyewitnesses, not like people who spoke with eyewitnesses, etc.
So we have 4 canonical gospels. Of those 4, we have 2 that were followers of Jesus, disciples, and 2 that are not.
Okay,
right?
So I mean, two is not crazy to me to.
Well, hold on, because the thing that gets conflated here is the source and the eyewitness level claim that's recorded in a source, right? Within the sources, we have about 21 unique testimonies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Luke's not representing, he wasn't an eyewitness, but he represented other eyewitnesses in his accounts. But let's take this into consideration too. Take Plutarch, for example. He wrote counter narratives to alleged resurrected narratives. Romulus is one of them. He did one of Cleomedes and about 3 or 4 other guys where he decided he was going to give counter narratives to these resurrection stories. All of those people that allegedly had risen from the dead, these other rising gods, if you would, those followings died quickly, very, very quickly. And the evidence was put forth. I always found it interesting that Plutarch didn't even bring Jesus up. He didn't bring up that situation. Of course, it seems like to me he was attacking some sort of Christianity, trying to prove that the idea of rising gods was stupid. But he, for some reason, couldn't counter and chose not to counter, whether I'm not going to assume his motives, he's dead, but he chose not to combat the resurrection of Jesus narratives. Why Romulus? Why Cleomedes? Aristides, all of these guys. I mean, why would he do all of these counter resurrection narratives and yet not Jesus of Nazareth? I don't know the answer to that question, but we do know that there were other alleged people who were supposedly risen from the dead and their followings didn't make it. very short-lived. And even writing polemics against these things, there's entire research that was done and studies that were done to prove that these were lies and made up. And so what are your thoughts on that? Like just Plutarch alone writing against this.
Well,
Like,
my thoughts on that are that I didn't hear about it, and it pokes a pretty big hole in what I was saying.
read, do me a
I love the
favor.
honesty.
Read Plutarch's Life of Romulus. And if I can give you, let me find, guys, give me a second. I'll find it. You guys can jump in. Let me
I
find.
could probably sound that out.
Well, it's a big document. Unfortunately, Plutarch did not have the gift of
You can
brevity.
type it into the side chat, and then he can copy and paste
It's
it.
Yeah, I'll take a screenshot.
unfortunately Plutarch didn't have the gift of brevity. I think it's Life of Romulus. It's either 26 or 28, and he goes into these. Yes, I think it's Life of Romulus. I think it's 26 or 28, one of those areas. So I would read 26 through 28, and he actually gives multiple examples. And these are counter narratives to the resurrection accounts. He never once chose, even though it feels like he was attacking Christianity as being ignorant people, he chose not to include Jesus in his counter resurrection narratives. I find that interesting. I don't have an answer. I'm not saying that's because he was, not able to find evidence, but why? Why not? Of all the most recent of the ones he gives would have been Jesus.
Right.
And it's the one that had a community that was still living in his time. And he did not like the Christians, it felt like. So why not attack their rising God? Why not put the counter evidence for his resurrection? I don't know the answer. I don't think anybody knows the answer. I do find it intriguing. I would look into that.
Yeah, no, that is really interesting. Okay. Yeah, looking at that,
All
you
right,
said,
Paul.
well, then you said you're going to put it in the chat, or someone's put it in the chat. Yeah, all right, I appreciate it.
I will try to find it and put it in the chat.
Like I said,
Sorry.
too, join you sound like a kind of guy that wants to get into way more details than a stream like this will allow.
Yeah.
Join our Discord server, man. Seriously.
Yeah, 100%.
It'll be a space where we can just kind of chat back and forth, and it'll be helpful for more than just you and I.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm not super
28 1 through 6. Life of Romulus 28 1 through 6.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna put it.
Yeah, in the chat. Appreciate it. All right. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'll let you guys
Catch you later, bro.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm not the most articulate guy.
Dude, you did great. Don't worry. Don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I've tried the whole Chat GPT. I've tried looking it up, and I can't. This is kind of perfect for me to talk to people who I trust and respect. So this was really helpful for me, and hopefully anybody else who maybe had similar questions. So thank you guys.
All right, man. I'll catch you later.
Later.
Man, talking with agnostics and atheists is so much more fun and productive than some of these Islam call-in streams. Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna bake you, Than. Don't you want to be clipped?
You're gay. That's a nice math argument you have, but have you considered that you're gay? All right, let's get into some super chats quick. All right. If you refuse to fight Israel, man, wars, you'll get your arm broken. Doesn't matter if you're a Marine veteran.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything to build their third temple. Okay.
So we found the Candace fan.
Ain't no way we got It makes it hard and OnlyFans in the same stream. These jokes don't write themselves.
Man, this is a
Eric, were you there for that? I mean, Stephen, were you there for that?
No, Steve, was he? Yeah, he was there, wasn't he?
Was I?
I think he
was. I hope to God I wasn't.
Eric was talking about Bart Ehrman and how Bart makes him mad sometimes. But for some reason, Eric just goes, yeah, it just makes me hard.
Makes it.
You know what? That may have been one of our band together moments, wasn't it? I don't.
This is a real stiff comment here. Oh
my God!
I made a boner. All right, and I'm just gonna try to keep my head up.
You're fine, dude. You'll never outgame me, apparently, so it's fine. Surah Maryam 33 is another contradiction for Islam. Send it to me in Discord or email.
Says, peace be upon me. The day I was born, the day I died, and the day I will be raised back to life. It's Jesus speaking. And there actually is a Muslim scholar, Sheikh Imran Hossein, who actually says that the common belief that Jesus was never crucified based on 4:157 doesn't really work. And this verse actually kind of proves that Jesus was crucified and resurrected. Although, of course, he still holds Jesus as a prophet, not a son of God. But yeah, which is completely out of the Orthodox position.
Beast. Hi guys, never donated to a live stream before. Glad for my first to go to the good work you do. God bless. Thank you so much, Andrew. Glad Eric is bringing the streets and keeping it real since Irish Gangsta Mike Jones is missing. I think the wise men visit is at least 3 months after the birth. I mean, in Luke, they had to use birds for the sacrifice, so they were very poor.
Good point.
I think it's years. I think it's 2-3 years. I don't think it's just months. But yeah, basically the same point.
Yep.
And we'll do 2 more. IP says Old Testament laws are mostly didactic. Numbers 15. Is that the stick thing? Yeah, I think it's the stick
I don't
thing.
know off the top of my head.
IP says the Old Testament laws are mostly didactic.
Yeah, it's the stick thing. By didactic, we mean like in the ancient Near East, like the law codes are like considered wisdom literature, not legislation as you would think in like.
Did y'all do a video on that or something?
Yeah, we have a video on that.
Okay.
So go check that out. All right, last super chat, and then we'll get to the next caller. Where should I start for philosophy and best foundation for looking at our theology, Ignatius, or start with the Church Fathers?
Oh,
go ahead.
Well, I mean, I don't know about for philosophy. I mean, most of your philosophers are going to be Anselm or Thomas Aquinas, actually much later. If you're looking for from a philosophical start, foundational start, absolutely. Just ecclesiology, your theology. Ignatius is a good start, but we have to remember that Ignatius is broken into different sections of his versions. We have the short recension, the long recension, and we have a middle recension. And so there's a debate about how many letters there are from Ignatius. There's people pushing that he only wrote 3 original letters now, 7, and then you obviously have the longer recensions. I still hold to where Lightfoot did. I think there's 7 original letters, but we need to be careful that we don't read some of these others that are actually not from Ignatius. But First Clement, Didache, Epistle of Barnabas, the letter to Diognetus from the unknown person alleged as Mathetes because he calls himself a disciple. These are good places to start, in my opinion, second century Christianity. But philosophically, you really don't see a lot of the philosophers come into play till really the Alexandrian fathers, Caesarean fathers. But I think some of the better ones would be Anselm or Aquinas.
Yeah, it all depends on what you want to learn philosophy-wise too. So
True.
These kinds of questions are hard because philosophy is such a broad category.
Very true.
All right, let's bring on our next caller. Sorry, I just saw the name.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, Zoot, what's going on? Are you a Christian atheist or? The name's throwing me off, and now I got it.
Yeah, I bet. I'm an agnostic, I guess, in the middle. So I wonder what you think about scholar John Dominic Crossan saying Jesus wasn't buried in a tomb and that he was eaten by dogs or something to that effect.
Eric or Steven, do you guys want to tackle that? I talked a lot last time, so I'm trying to give you guys.
I'll let Eric start because
me on that one.
I mean, I'll chime in. I just wanted to give you because I just spoke a lot on the last one too.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, I think he's wrong, and so there you go.
I mean, so Crossan and Ehrman, they have quotes that they like to point to, and I can pull them up if you want. But basically, some of the proof texts that they go to justify this, they actually don't fit to the context that
Yeah, they
it
don't.
happened under Jesus. And like, there's one where it says like, leave him to the crows, and I can find it. Like I said, the source is escaping the top of my head. And these are all like post-Jewish war, for instance, where we have an edict from Claudius that dates around to the time of Jesus, where it's actually like talking about supplicating to Jewish law when you're doing like crucifixions and stuff like that. So the long story short is like the evidence that we do have supports goes against the arguments against the burial of Jesus, if that makes sense.
Well,
Yeah.
you said it's too much trouble to bring those up. You said
No, I can bring them up. That's just me kind of like
So
yeah. I'd like
getting
to
the
see
stuff.
those.
But go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, that's
So
what
there-
go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, the problem is that the earliest counter polemics to what happened to Jesus came from the Jews. Well, somebody could say, well, we don't want to count Matthew 28 about what
Trifo.
happened, because the idea is his body would be stolen. That's Matthew, right? But we also see in the dialogue with Trifo, for example, and then Tertullian talks about this too, that the Jews, even at that period, were still talking about how his disciples stole the body. So if they're alleging, and there's a lot of counters, by the way, there's others that would end that. We even have Syrian documents. We also have Roman and Greek intellectuals who tried to get into this. Multiple people tried to come up with a solution for the Christian narrative. What happened to the body was one of the earliest polemics is it was stolen. So if it was stolen, everybody at least agreed the body was buried and was known where he was buried, so that they had to come up to an excuse as to what happened to it. So even in the earliest Jewish polemics, Jesus' body was properly based in a known place, and then it was either stolen or there's some sort of conspiracy going on. These are some of the counter resurrection narratives that came. We don't just have it even from the Jews. We have it from Greeks. We have it from the Syrians. We have it from the Romans. There's a lot of counter ideas as to what happened to the body, all of which agreed were buried, that he was buried and the people knew where he was buried.
Yeah.
So it's not just the Gospels.
Yeah. Why I went kind of blank there for a second, and I'm sorry about that. It's like, it was wrong. Boom. Discussion over. But basically, I just wanted to make sure that I was remembering the argument and trying to steel man it. And basically, it's just that Jesus wouldn't have been given a proper burial because it was the normative practice of the Romans to just throw the bodies of crucifixion victims into a common grave. But there's definitely appear to be exceptions to that for sure. So, for example, we have Philo of Alexandria, who was a contemporary of Jesus, who wrote in Flaccus 83, it says, I've known cases when on the eve of the holiday of this kind, people who had been crucified have been taken down and their bodies delivered to their kinsfolk because it was thought well to give them a burial and allow them ordinary rites. For it was meet that the dead should have the advantage of some kind treatment upon the birthday of an emperor, and also the sanctity of the festival should be maintained. And so it's talking about during Jewish festivals. Well, John informs us that the motivation for taking down the bodies on the cross and burying them was because the next day was the Sabbath, which happened to be a high day, and not just any other ordinary Sabbath day, but a special feast day falling on within the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Passover, right? And so Josephus also talks about there was people who were given proper burial. This is in Wars 542, where it talks about, nay, they proceeded to that degree of impiety as to cast away their dead bodies without burial, although the Jews used to take so much care of the burial of men that they took down those that were condemned and crucified and buried them before the going down of the sun. And so apparently the Jews considered it sacrilege, and there was these Idumeans who wanted to cast away the dead bodies of the deceased without a proper burial, and they're like, no, that's not cool, we're not going to do that. There's other exceptions that are made in other historical sources, and so they're just kind of taking like one statement about what Romans would do and ignoring all this other background that we have from Josephus and Philo and others, that no, actually there were cases where even crucifixion victims were given a proper burial.
I
just found my notes on this too. Adding on to what Eric just said too. He said it because you cited Josephus. You have the Digesta, which is it's 48:24:1 says, the corpses of those who were sentenced to die are not to be withheld from their relatives today. However, the corpses of executed people are buried as if permission has been asked for and granted, with some exceptions, especially when the charge was high treason. Even the bodies of those condemned to be burned at the stake can be claimed, obviously, so that the bones and ashes can be collected and buried. And Jesus wasn't charged with high treason. And then the following verses after that, the bodies of the executed persons are to be granted to any who seek them for burial. Even Caesar Augustus was sympathetic to the Jews and their ways as well. So he has an edict in 1 BC that says that the Jews shall use their own customs in accordance with their ancestral law, just as they used to use them in the times of Hyrcanus, the high priest of their highest God, and all their sacred offerings shall be inviolable and shall be sent to Jerusalem and shall be paid to the financial officials of Jerusalem, and that they shall not give sureties for appearance in court on the Sabbath or on the day of preparation before it, after the 9th hour. But if anyone is detected stealing their sacred books or their sacred monies, either from a synagogue or from a men's apartment, he shall be considered sacrilegious, and his property shall be brought into the public treasury into the Romans. That's just that's like a text to kind of just show like they were the Romans were supplicating to the Jewish law. For Ehrman and Crossan, I just pulled up their stuff here. They point to Horace's epistles, Suetonius's Life of Augustus, and the problem here is these are just not representative of the practices that are representative of what's happening during Jesus' time, right?
Not to mention, we do have archaeological evidence of like what was the guy's name, Yohanan, who there's who was given a burial, and he's definitely a crucifixion victim. There's a nail through his foot, and so like there's that also to be taken into consideration.
And again, it seems like the earliest polemics had no problem acknowledging that he was given a proper burial. Their theory was, as I stated, we have Syrian, Greek, Roman, and Jewish polemics very early on trying to justify the Christians' claim. And they can only come up with things like conspiracy, stolen body, the very things that Matthew was already pointing out anyway. By the way, I even have, and I just posted it in there, in that same link on my academia page, I have my own translation of the Gospel of Peter. The Gospel of Peter is not a canonical gospel. In fact, it contradicts the canonical gospels on the timing of which the body was asked for from Pilate, because it was Joseph came, and it says that he was a friend of Pilate, and knowing they were about to crucify Jesus, he came to Pilate and asked for the body. And Pilate sent to Herod in this narrative and said, Herod, what do you think about giving the body over to these people? And Herod had told Pilate, even if no one had asked for him, we would have to bury him since it's Sabbath. The Sabbath was basically drawing near. And then he quotes the law, the son must not go down, son who is executed. That's not in the canonical gospels. This is in the Gospel of Peter, outside of the biblical text, also acknowledging that Herod told Pilate, if this is true, but it's still in the stories, it's still in the early transmission, the 2nd century, that had Jesus not even been given the opportunity for a proper burial by Roman law, Jews would require that he would be buried by a Jewish law, and that Pilate was willing to concede that point and give the Jews what they wanted about a man they hated. So, and there's multiple things there. I tried to share the link. I don't think it worked. Actually, it said it kicked me. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Yeah, I did.
Are you on the private chat? Let's see.
I think so.
Maybe it'll let me do it in the try. There we go. That's the Gospel of Peter. It's my own translation, actually. You'll be hard to find one. And most of the translations are not modern English. I actually put it to modern English. This is about 4 or 5 years ago. But even narratives like that speak of the burial and the necessity of it and the debates behind it. And even if it's faulty and not true, what we can see is even in the 2nd century, they were reasoning with how would they do something with Jesus's body between Roman official and Jewish officials. And they were even playing this out against the biblical canon gospels. Timing is off, the conversations. In our gospels, it is Pilate who's in charge of releasing the body. In the Gospel of Peter, it's actually Herod, and Pilate goes to Herod for permission. So they don't even agree with each other, and they still come to the same conclusion.
Okay, what you're saying? There's been a consensus among all these different groups.
I'm saying regardless of it, whether it's within the canonical Christian Orthodox text or outside of the canonical Christian Orthodox text, or whether you're looking at the earliest Jewish polemics, the Greek polemics, the Syrian polemics, or the Roman polemics, all of these counterclaims of how this Christian movement began at least agreed that Jesus was buried in a proper place. The debate then becomes, how did the body go missing? They didn't believe he was just thrown into a group of bodies in a pit somewhere and then left there to rot with other people. And then in addition to that, Than and Eric are basically showing that that's not even the common practice that was even really going on, that Josephus and others are showing us that proper burials were happening all the time for even executed criminals who are found with worse crimes than Jesus.
Real quick thing that I'll add to, when you look at the stories in the Gospels about the burial, they do show signs of like being eyewitness testimony, because like one of the things I've heard a lot of skeptics say is like, well, there's like development in the Gospels, especially in the resurrection accounts and different things like that. Like the story gets a little more grandiose as you progress, but which I don't think is true. But just even looking at the burial accounts, like the first Gospel says that Joseph of Arimathea took courage and asked Pilate for the body. That's Mark 15:43. But he never explains like why he would need courage, right? Like he just leaves it as kind of this gap, this unexplained illusion. But then in John, which is obviously the latest gospel, he actually seems to like kind of fill in a gap. It says that Joseph was a secret disciple who had been afraid of the Jewish leaders. That's John 19:38. But that makes sense of Mark's comment that Joseph took courage because he had reason to be afraid. But what does John do? He completely drops any sort of praise about Joseph of Arimathea entirely. If John was just copying and upgrading Mark, you'd expect him to like really kind of like gas up Joseph's bravery, and like amplify it. But he actually looks like he undermines it. John instead highlights that Joseph had been a secret disciple for the fear of the Jews. Again, that's John 19:38. So there's no kind of like heroic progression here. It's, if anything, it looks like a demotion. And yet earlier in the same gospel, John explicitly throws shade on people who believe in him but keep quiet out of fear. It says in John 12:43, for they love the glory that comes from man more than the glory that comes from God. And so meanwhile, you got Mark calling him brave. In Luke's version, he calls Joseph of Arimathea righteous, and even goes out of his way to tell us that Joseph hadn't consented to their decision regarding Luke's death. But yeah, it's like then you get this other story in John where he's kind of portrayed as kind of a bit of a coward, and so that doesn't look like legendary progression. It looks more kind of messy, and they fill in the same kind of like they fill in gaps without trying to intentionally. It looks like and so that's why I think it looks more like reportage than just literary invention and fictionalizing.
And honestly, he's kind of random. Joseph of Arimathea is random. He's not even anywhere else in Jesus's earthly ministry earlier. He's not a guy that Jesus raised from the dead. He's not a guy that was blind, that was healed. He's not a guy that had some sort of relevance in the Jesus narrative. He just, bam, shows up right there at the death. I mean, like all of a sudden there's this random guy, Joseph of Arimathea, out of nowhere. It's kind of odd. It's peculiar. You would expect if you're creating a narrative or faking it, it'd be somebody close to Jesus, somebody he did a miracle to, somebody that he healed, that would be coming and doing this. If you're going to make a story up, you're going to bring a character who's already been on the scene to be the hero that takes the body and puts him in the tomb and gives him this proper burial. Not some random guy that's just out of left field that nobody's seen in this entire gospel narrative, or none of the other gospel writers after Mark felt like it was necessary to explain who he was either. They just, as Eric said, just shows up and actually kind of downgrades him a little bit. So what kind of storytelling is that? It's terrible storytelling if it's made up.
What are your thoughts, man?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm just having a lot of thoughts. I actually tried to bring my friend who's a Jesus mythicist up. I don't think he showed up, but he also said,
Wait. How do we know that your friend exists?
I knew that was coming. I knew it was coming.
Sorry.
But he pointed out problems with Josephus, that Josephus lived after Jesus, and a lot of the accounts he has could be forgeries. Wonder if
Yeah,
I was
I-
going to
I
say you should watch the Mike and I don't know if you were there for that one.
I wasn't
But
there.
Mike
I was
did an
sick.
interview with Tom Schmidt.
That was me.
Where
That was me.
that
And
you?
it
Oh,
was
that's
me
right. It
and,
was you.
It was
Yeah.
me and Mike. Me and
Yeah.
Mike.
Well, I'll shut up then. You can explain it,
Yeah,
Stephen, if you want to, just
Go ahead,
briefly.
Stephen.
No, I mean, I would just for the sake of time. I mean, I don't know. That was maybe 6 months ago, guys.
It was a while ago.
But there's a whole discussion, and he's a Josephus scholar, probably one of the top out there, and he talks about how the parts that we are most concerned about actually shouldn't be concerned, and we have multiple translations of areas. But even if we were to eliminate certain sections that are so-called in question, but after you listen to him, you'll realize they're actually not in question at all. We have other places that are not in question. So I don't understand this constant appeal by mythicists to go to Josephus. He doesn't help you, even if you're right about the sections that are not real, or their later interpolations or redactions.
Well,
So
yeah, and it's not just that; it's that Josephus was in connection to the family of the high priest.
very much at the trial of Jesus.
Yep.
The ones that were at the trial of Jesus and responsible for it.
Yeah, I think that's his strongest points in the book.
Yeah. I'll also just add in really quickly to the Giga Chad move, which is just, well, the Gospels are reliable. So,
Yeah.
but I understand that the mythicists won't grant that either. But yeah.
Look, Eric, you said Josephus's family was there. What did you say?
Josephus was in connection to the family of
High
the people, the high priest who were at the trial of Jesus. He knows like multiple of them. Go back and watch the interview. And actually, Schmidt's book, I think it's called Josephus and Jesus or something. I don't know. You can just TC Schmidt, Josephus, Jesus. You can download the book for free. He's made it available for free.
I think it's still
So
free. I don't know if they
it's still free.
Schmidt talking to this Mr. Steven here.
It was me and Mike. It's on Mike's channel. It's on this channel.
Yeah, it's on our channel here. But I'd also just look at the book. The scholarship on Josephus is slowly changing.
Okay. Also,
Josephus and Jesus new evidence for Christ or something like that. Yeah.
Do you know who Adam Green is? It'd be cool if you could respond to him at some point.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, never heard of him.
Made videos about you, so I guess you haven't seen them.
Who is the referent for you?
Green from No More News.
Who is you?
Yeah, but
Well, he's just
who is
he's a mythicist.
is he making videos towards Eric?
All right, inspiring philosophy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get a lot of people making videos about us. It's hard to.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
I have a
One
playlist of people who have dedicated response videos to me. So
when like 500 witnesses are mentioned, like obviously their names aren't mentioned, and is it true that this is only in Paul's letters?
it's only in Paul's letters, and I don't use the 500 as
we don't
strong evidence because we don't have any details of what the appearances were like or their names, and so I don't think it's very strong from an evidential standpoint. It might show like the information in 1 Corinthians 15 is that like belief in the resurrection was like early and widespread, but it doesn't really give you much, so I wouldn't use that as an argument.
I just put the link for josephusandjesus.com in the private chat. So that'll take you to the download and everything. So that's from Schmidt.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think the 500 is necessary. We obviously know there was a larger crowd of people just looking at Acts and Jesus's ascension as well. We also have miscellaneous appearances, say like to Cleopas and his friend on the road of Emmaus. I mean, there's a lot of other factors there. We don't have an exact number when we're reading that, but we can assume there's quite a few, especially with how many people were in the upper room. So I don't necessarily use the 500. I don't even think Paul was trying to make an apologetic there as much as like there's about this many other people that he had known of, and he was just throwing that in as examples of people who were witnesses. I don't think he was necessarily trying to make a bigger point than that out of it. Like, oh, let me give you their names and numbers.
Oh, okay. Yeah. One more. When you say like there were Syrian polemics against the early Christians, what were these polytheists or what were their beliefs?
What do you mean? You talking about as far as the resurrection goes?
Yeah. When you said they were Syrian, Roman, and Jewish.
Yeah, let me try to pull a couple of them up. The earliest Jewish ones were the major highlights. Let's see here. Obviously, you've got legal authorities of the Babylonian Talmud. That's Jews. Celsus on Jesus' miraculous powers. The Roman Emperor Julian on Jesus' powers. That's taken from an excerpt from Cyril of Alexandria. Porphyr of Jesus' magical arts. Plenty on the Christian superstition. Tacitus on the Christian superstition. Suetonius on the Christian superstition. I mean, when you look at all of these and you break them down, you find different viewpoints. And Tertullian preserves some of this, especially with Porphyr. You look at these different guys, especially how they were being combated more so. Of course, most of what we have of their polemics are preserved in citations of argumentation against them, whether that be Origen or whether that be Justin the Martyr or whether that be Tertullian. So some of these polemics they're combating, we actually don't have like the exact copies of them. We have the quotations from them that are being combated by these church father figures. Unless you're talking about some of the Jewish sources like the Babylonian Talmud or something. So when you're looking at the Greek, Syrian, and Roman, when you look at those numbers there, they get into that, especially, and then obviously Pliny and Tacitus being Roman, and Suetonius in his Life of Nero. So when you're talking about these texts, you see all of those getting covered with Tertullian and Justin the Martyr and Origen. And so we know these different polemics were coming from different parts of the world because they're battling them in their different regions of the world.
Okay, that makes sense. Would any of you actually be willing to come on like X Spaces? There's like a group called CQ Radio, Christian Question Radio. It's a big anti-Christian group on X, Twitter, and they run spaces almost every day. And the Christians that come up there are not very impressive, for the lack of a better word.
Well, I mean, I'd have to listen to what kind of a. First, I'm not on X because it's a huge distraction and a waste of time to me. But second of all, you kind of have to be careful with some of these call-in streams because when somebody's knowledgeable comes up, if it's anything like a lot of the Muslim call-in shows, they just start talking over you, muting you, don't letting you talk, filibustering, and kicking you.
They wouldn't do that to you. I've been on there. They wouldn't do that. There's some decorum that goes on.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know. We'd have to check it out.
We'll check it out. But we got other callers we got to get to, man.
Wait, more thing.
If it's quick, we got a long queue, man.
I forgot. Wait, hold on. Just give me a second. Wait. Let me just. It's in my notes. Sorry about this. Okay. When I saw the resurrection video that Michael Jones has, and his for why the hallucinations happen. I mean, it makes me think of like when there were some Nazis or like the progeny of
that's going to be. I'm going to cut you off right there. Mike's old video on the resurrection needs to be updated. I'll be actually making a video on the resurrection at some point in the future. Okay. But the topic of hallucination is going to we're going to have to get into the literature. Okay. We have a live stream that we did with a psychologist that that tackles hallucinations. You should go check that out.
Okay.
And we're actually going to have him back on the channel next month as well. Or actually, no, this month. At some point. So we'll be on the lookout for that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Catch you later, man.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Let's get to our next caller. How much time do you guys got, by the way?
I got till about 9:15. Is that okay? Is that too
short?
Like
30 minutes?
Yeah,
that's fine.
Cool. All right, we'll try to speed the rest of these calls so we can get to everybody. So, Tavo-san, what do you want me to call you, man?
Tavo's fine. Tavo's fine.
Okay, cool.
You can hear me, right? Okay.
Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on. I sent you guys an email as well, and this is going to be pretty quick, and I hope this is on topic enough. But I'm a professor, and recently Paulo GM made a video about me, and then Mr. Deity made a video about me.
Join the club.
Yeah, and I just feel like as a young or at least new content creator, I'm kind of getting overwhelmed by this stuff. But
What's your channel?
Just Tavo Sanabri.
You're the guy with the owl.
I'm the
like,
guy with the owl.
avatar. Yeah,
Okay, I'm glad you know who I am.
yeah. I think I saw.
Don't be offended that I don't. I actually am never on social media or like consume content in general.
No, I did send you an email, I think, though, off the website.
You sent it to me?
Yeah.
I'm very backed up as well on email.
That's okay.
So
and totally
missed it. I'm sorry.
And this is going to be kind of a quick question anyways. So I'm a university professor, and I'm kind of really into like quantitative, like cross-traditional research. So one of the things I did is I looked at like 17 major existing religions, and I evaluated creedal speed and tomal speed. You know, how fast did the creed develop in each religion? How fast did the tome develop in each religion? And then I looked at the first 50 years of each religion, and the first 100 years, the first 150, the first 200 years, just to see how many secondary attestations there are, corroborating each religion's main thesis or main creed. So I have a whole bunch of data, and I really just wanted to ask if one of you would be willing to like sit down with me, and I'll just give you all this data. And it's because I make some content, but I get kind of, to be honest, I get kind of just overwhelmed by
this. Sounds really interesting to me. Have you done any? Are you trying to do like a statistical analysis with this, or like?
No. So I'm actually the editor of two journals in my field, but I'm not in a theological field at all. I'm totally in a different branch of academia. So I've actually published a couple of theological papers, which I find really interesting, but I'm personally theologically non-committed. But the data that I've looked at is really, really convincing. And so I'll just give you I'm like maybe 55, 60% on theism, but I think I'm like 85 or 90% that if a theistic worldview is correct, then Jesus probably had some divine authority. So I think that is actually very well established in the literature. I'm sort of at the branch point where I'm kind of, I kind of wrestle with atheism a lot, and I was an atheist for almost all my adult life. But anyways, I'd just love to like have an hour with you and just be like, here's a bunch of data,
man.
Make videos.
No, I want to take that time. Shoot me an email right now, if you can, than@inspiringphilosophy.com, and I will tell you when I got it, and then that way I can like mark it so that way it doesn't get lost in my weeds of other emails. Is that fair?
Yeah, sure. That's really fair. I think the thing that happens for like new content creators, especially those of us who are not like quite plugged into like a church or a major community or a ministry, is that we get sort of overwhelmed with atheistic arguments and people responding to those who are atheists. And it just,
I've been there, man.
Yeah, and it gets really disheartening. But moreover, I think the evidence that I have is quite quantitatively compelling. I'll tell you, I'm one of the top manuscript reviewers for the main journal in my field since they started keeping records since the journal started.
Yeah, definitely. No, I want to talk, man. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Just so you know, like again, my notification list, I have 1,770 notifications.
Oh, I'll email you too, Stephen. Okay, thanks. I see your email.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And it's just THAN@inspiringphilosophy.com.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Send it to both of us. And so that way Stephen and I are like together in it. I don't know if Eric, you want in on it, but
Sure.
If anything, this could be something that we could just co-author all together a paper on. You'll be author number one. And
I don't even need to be on it, to be honest. I kind of just want the facts to get out there. And although I've seen a lot.
Look, I'm going to tell you the same thing that Dr. Tim McGrew said to me on a paper that I'll be working on with Dr. Tim McGrew, because I said the same thing to him.
Great researcher.
And he told me there will never be a day that I take an idea or data or something like that from somebody and make it into an argument without crediting the other person.
Absolutely.
So,
and I totally dig the ethos. It's more for me that I just, it's so important for me to get these arguments out there, and I don't see them in the apologetical sphere.
We'll do it. We'll do it together. Let's look at what you got.
I'd love that.
Yeah. And if we kind of look at everything and we think there's something that we can do with it, let's make it happen, man. I'm serious.
Yeah. I'm open to, especially if it's relevant to statistics. Heck, my channel's called Facts. So also at the same time, you talked about manuscript stuff. I'm quite interested in that because most of my PhD work was in textual criticism and canonicity. So I'd love to see what you have in a developmental corroborated sense. So
yeah, it's all cross theological. So it's all looking at like years of attestations, years of
Yeah.
witnesses, traditions in each
like it.
major theology.
No,
and,
I know. I
I
love
like
it.
it.
I think that
I
there's
like
a
it.
really cool way to do like a statistical analysis for this and
Like it.
do some really cool stuff. So thanks for calling in, man. Seriously.
Tag-
Did you
tag me? Yeah, just tag me in that. I'd love to talk with you about that as well. There's a lot of good stuff.
I'll email you
I already
both,
have
right?
about 10 thoughts that I want to.
I have
work
so
with
many,
you
but
on.
I want to get to the rest of the callers.
Yep, for sure.
So shoot us an email. I'm not gonna remove you until I get it though.
Oh, okay. I'll shoot it to you right now. I'll shoot it to you.
That way it's like my ADHD doesn't mess this up. No, I'm super excited about this. And I gave you a sub on
that's kind of you. That's super nice of
on
you.
your
Thank you.
channel. And by the way, guys, like go sub to him. I'll put the link in the chat. If I can make a computer work. The heck. Here it is. There you go, guys.
Okay, I just
Just
shot you an
confirm,
email,
so-
but I'll send you another email that gives at least a little more context.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. I'm super happy to be on here, and I'll shoot you another email right now, and I'll include Stephen as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. We'll talk soon, okay?
Likewise. Yeah, pleasure.
Bye. Okay. You guys ready for the next one? That was cool. I'm excited about that, Stephen.
Yeah. I had a lot of thoughts, so I can't wait to.
I have a
hear
lot, but I'm holding them
Yep,
for now.
yep,
That's all.
Yep.
All right. Oh my gosh.
Hello, sir.
What's
Hello,
up,
sir.
Saeed?
I'm
Did you
doing
change
great, sir.
those smoke alarm batteries?
Yeah. I will change it. Just I have a quick two question, not very fast. Jesus was dead for 3 days, so he no longer have those memory for 3 days. What happening in the universe? He does not know. So 3 days he did not have memory. The second question
Yeah,
is
let's take the first question right away. The Gospels, the New Testament doesn't record this. The New Testament records what happens when Jesus is bodily dead. He descends into the spirit. He descends to the spirits in prison and preaches to them, and he is still conscious during that time. So he has memories. He's speaking to the spirits in prison.
I thought he was dead for 3 days.
Okay, you're a Muslim, right?
Yes.
Do you believe that you have a soul?
No, I'm just asking.
That was a question. Do you believe you have a soul?
I have a different definition of soul.
You believe that when you die,
Do you
or is your
believe
bo- are you
that? Do you
separated
believe
from
that
your
if you
body?
die bodily? Do you believe that if you die bodily, memories, everything is gone,
Yeah,
and that
we
it's
are dead.
impossible. Wait, hold on. And that it's impossible for you to have any sort of conscious experience. Man, those smoke alarms are like
I mean, that
scrambling my
means
brain.
You are dead. Everything is dead. Brain dead. Memory
Okay,
dead.
well, congrats. You've just takfired yourself, Saeed. Because as soon as you die, you're not going to go to heaven.
No, you are not going to heaven. There will be resurrection, and there will be a judgment day, and you will be resurrected. So when you are dead,
Okay.
that means end of it. Nothing memory.
But you said as
nothing-
soon as you die, there's no more memories.
No, you don't have memory. Everything is gone. God recorded your memory and keep in a safe place. When you when He resurrected you and He put your memory back in your body, He will make a new body.
Saeed,
and
I asked you a very specific question. I'm gonna let you answer this again. Do you think it is impossible that you can have some sort of a conscious experience or in first person perspective without a living body?
Dead people.
That's a yes
do
or no
not have
question.
memory.
That is a yes or no question. I just asked you.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. The way I believe, where dead person do not have memory.
That is not what I asked you. That is not what I asked you.
What do you ask?
Can you repeat the question I just asked you back to me, please?
No. Remind me.
Okay, I'm gonna kick you if you're not gonna listen to the questions I'm asking you. Okay,
okay,
this is the
okay.
third time
I will-
I'm asking you.
I mean,
It is. Is
why
it?
you upset? Just 1 minute you upset.
I'm because I've asked you the same question.
You're
I've
having a
asked you
hard
the same
time.
question. I've asked you the same question 3 times, and I've still not gotten an answer.
No, okay,
So I'm going to
okay.
ask. I'm going to ask you again.
Okay.
And if you're
Well-
not able to ask, if you're not able to like tell me what you just heard, it tells me you're not interested in an actual conversation.
No.
Is
I'm
it
interested.
impossible?
The-
Is it impossible for you to have a conscious experience apart from a living body?
What I believe, okay? I believe a dead person do not have memory.
Where does the Quran say that? Where does the Quran or whatever text?
That's not,
what supports your belief? What even supports that belief at all? Period. Anyway,
No,
sorry. Go ahead,
forget
Dan.
about
I
Quran.
apologize.
Well, that's still not actually even answering my question. That's still not answering my question.
What is your question? I mean, you said
I'm asking you if you think it is impossible. I don't care what you believe actually is the case, right? I'm asking you what you think is possible. Do you think it is impossible for you to have a conscious experience without a living body?
Yeah, you don't have consciousness.
You think it's impossible? Okay. No. Do you know what the difference is between something being possible and impossible, Said?
Brother.
That's a yes or no question.
I do not believe dead people.
I don't
have
care
a
what you believe. That was a
consciousness.
yes or no question, Said.
I mean, you want me to agree with you?
I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you
Well, I am
to justify
explaining.
your belief. Okay. All right, Said. I'll catch you later, man. You got to fix those smoke alarms, too.
I'm going to send him some batteries.
Why do they always have the chirp here?
Man.
Oh.
What?
Oh,
Where did that even come from?
What
I'm
was
just-
that?
Is that you, Eric?
That's just my phone, dude.
I'm
What
going
in
to
the
kick
world,
you, dude.
Man,
Like, he's still here.
Hey, wait, hold on.
I'm going to hear that in my sleep. Thank you.
Dude, Steven, it was worse. Last time he came in and there were 3 smoke alarms simultaneously chirping. It'd be like beep, and then you would hear it at a different angle, beep, and then a different angle, beep. It was really bad.
Maybe it made some purpose at this point. I don't know.
It like kills my brain. All right. Oh gosh,
Eric. Oh my God.
Hey,
man.
what did Jesus remember? Chirp. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I shouldn't make fun, but it was just what was that? Never go full Muslim, man, people.
All right, let's go to the next caller. Hey, Aaron, what's up, dude?
Hey. So I heard an objection about the story of Barabbas.
Okay.
And the objection I heard was other outside sources from the Bible have testified, I think Josephus is one, have testified that Pontius Pilate was like ruthless. And he was just not the kind of person that would have, offered to free a prisoner. And that doesn't really have much precedent in Jewish culture. So I'm wondering what you guys have read on that.
Okay. I'm going to back up, but let's go before Barabbas here. Let's talk about Pilate's situation. We know that he was already in big trouble with Tiberius. If you remember, in Samaria, there was a leader who tried to rally a bunch of people to go to the mountain of Moses to find these relics and these trophies that supposedly Moses had left on the mountain. As a result of that, Pilate sent an entire army to stop them from going up, turned into a massacre, killed a bunch of them, arrested others, and then killed prisoners. Well, that didn't go over real well with Tiberius because people had actually reached out to Tiberius and they actually complained about Pilate. Now, Pilate had gotten in huge trouble. He was actually pretty much on probation with Tiberius by this point. This is why the Jews tried to manipulate him even in the trial of Jesus, saying that if you let this man go, you're not a friend of Caesar. Well, that initially triggered a response in Pilate. I actually think that Pilate was willing to do a lot of things he didn't want to do for Jewish custom, and that he was willing to relinquish a lot of things because he had already been told on by the Jews for how he had killed a lot of these Samaritans. Jesus even alludes to this concept in Luke 13, I believe it is, where Pilate had mixed the blood of sacrifices and people are really upset. I mean, he is not on good terms, and he has already had people go behind him to Tiberius. He is not in a good place to be making more Jewish people mad. So it actually is just before we even get to Barabbas, the entire trial can be easily manipulated to the Jews because of his prior mistakes and probation with Tiberius. He is not on good terms with Caesar. And that's why they use that line. If you let this man go, you're not a friend of Caesar. Because he knew that they knew that he was on probation. And if he's not being friendly with Tiberius, if he's not being friendly with Caesar, you're going to put yourself in a really bad situation with us. And so I actually think that Pilate was willing to do a lot of things to appease the Jews at this point. Desperation was definitely on the table. Eric, what do you think?
No, I totally agree 100%. Yeah, there is the Jews did complain to Tiberius Caesar about shields that Pilate had erected in Jerusalem, and Tiberius wrote him a sharply worded letter basically saying, hey, take them down. This is in Embassy 299 to 305, according to Philo. This is in Philo, that he records this. And so, yeah, I totally agree 100%. Furthermore, Craig Evans tells us there was a papyrus around 85 AD, which records a Roman governor of Egypt talking about somebody. He says, where you are worthy of scourging, but I give you to the crowds. And then Pliny the Younger in the early 2nd century mentions the release of prisoners based on petitions to proconsuls and lieutenants, which seems plausible as it would be unlikely for someone to set them free without authority. We have an inscription from Ephesus that describes the proconsul's decision to release prisoners due to public demands. Livy, writing in the early 1st century, talks about special dispensations to remove chains from prisoners' limbs. Josephus recounts when Governor Albinus was leaving office in 64 AD that he released all the prisoners except murderers in hopes of receiving favor from the people. One more example, Archelaus sought to gain favor and secure his late father's kingdom by complying with the demands to release imprisoned individuals. That's in Antiquities. And so collectively, I think, and plus the background of what Stephen just said about what we know, the position that Pilate was in, the evidence suggests that both Roman rulers and at least one Herodian prince occasionally did release prisoners. And like Stephen said, Pilate was in an awkward spot right there. And so, yeah, I don't have any problem with the idea that we would have released Barabbas. Yeah. Aaron, you're muted.
Oh, I got to unmute him. I muted him because he was echoing. My bad. I thought he could unmute himself.
That's weird.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's that seems to make sense. I mean, I did read about some instances where on like ceremonial occasions they would release prisoners or something. But like, yeah, it was very out of character for Pilate, and that does seem to be true. But I guess what Stephen said there really adds a lot of context to it, and I guess it does make more sense. I just didn't know like how it would respond to that kind of objection.
Yeah, well, and the other thing too is it is an argument from silence. They're basically saying that, hey, this isn't recorded in other sources, which we do have examples where things like it were recorded in other sources. But ultimately, it is just an argument from silence. It's just like, well, the Gospels say this thing that's weird, and we don't have other corroboration of it or something like that. And like that's not a very strong argument.
Okay. Yeah, I think also the fact that it's in all four gospels kind of adds to the likelihood that it probably happened.
Yeah, read about that a little bit in Jewish Antiquities. I'm actually going to put it in here as well. Where, sorry, that echo is killing me.
Yeah, bro. Aaron, when you're not talking, mute yourself just because of the echo.
So I'm going to send it. I just put it in the private chat. Jewish Antiquities 18. You'll see the story about the Samaritans that were going to go up and find these relics supposedly, and Pilate took it as a threat and an uprising. He ended up killing quite a few people. He met him on the mountain and had him killed, and that did not fly very well. He made a couple of crucial mistakes as governor, if you would, of that region, and that was one of his, just in my opinion, stupid mistakes. He took it to be as an uprising. I mean, remember, everybody's on high alert. I mean, Herod did the same thing with John the Baptist. That's why he killed him. Because at the end of the day, they're on high alert for a lot of things. The Jews are on high alert that the Romans are going to shut down their worship of the temple. Eric already gave earlier in the show examples of this, where anytime something was done wrong, the Roman authorities were cutting them off from doing Passover. They weren't able to do any of their Feast of Tabernacles. Everything was being threatened. So this tension between Herod and Pilate constantly, where they were friends one minute and they hated each other the next minute. I mean, there's so many issues that are going on politically speaking, and a lot of people are on probation with the big guy. And so at the end of the day, people have made mistakes, and it's kind of like when you're a sinking ship, you take other people down with you. But also if you're what is on the line, you'll give up a lot. You'll sell your soul to not go down, because you got to remember some of the Caesars were radical on certain things. You didn't just get like fired, you got executed. So, I mean, there's parts of this where you're putting your own life in jeopardy if you're going to choose to handle these situations wrong. So there's a lot of examples where Pilate was in the hot seat. And I just sent you the Jewish Antiquities 18. Look at that reference. Read about what happened in the situation according to Josephus.
Cool. I actually did just order a comprehensive thing of all of Josephus's works, and I'm going to start reading on it soon. So, I'll check that out, man. Thanks.
Awesome. Excellent. All right, man. I'll catch you later, Aaron. We got 2 more callers left, and I'm going to see if we can just power through that before we end up here. All right.
Hey, Aaron. Appreciate it.
All right. Catch you later. All right. Let's take these 2 last callers, and then we'll do super chats and then call it.
Sounds good.
The Assyrian, how's it going, man?
Good. How about you? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
We're at the tail end of the stream, just so you know. So sorry if we try to push through anything you got here.
No, you're good. The minimal witnesses hypothesis, would your guys' rebuttal be to that the historical reportage model?
Yeah, I would just say that if the historical reportage model is true, then minimal witnesses is just completely off the table. It's
yeah.
That's it's simple
I
as
agree
that.
with that. I agree with that.
That's why maximalism is more the way to go. If you try to rebut minimal witnesses with just the Lacona minimal facts approach.
Oh, name drop.
I think you're gonna struggle. Whereas we're not encumbered.
We're Giga Chads here.
Yeah.
I figured. All right. Well, that was my question. That was it. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
all right, man. Catch you later.
See you.
That was easy enough. All right, we got 1 more left. Xander, the left-hander. What's going on, man? You're muted.
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I'm sorry if my room's messy. I had a talk with a Unitarian in which he explained to me that Jesus is not God because, in his words, God cannot be tempted, and I think he said Jesus was tempted by the devil, or that he also brought up like Hebrews where it says like he knows like I'm blanking on the Hebrews quote, but he kind of cut me off. But when dealing with Unitarians, what do you usually say? Because usually I just go to Hebrews like 1:8, and I do this with Jehovah's Witnesses, where God the Father calls God the Son literally God. But what is y'all's strategy?
I don't want to conflate a couple things here, so let's go back to the whole idea of God being tempted.
Xander,
Which
can
I'm
you
sure,
can you mute yourself while you're not talking? Just because you're echoing too. Thanks, bro.
So, yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. So basically, the concept that goes into James that God is not tempted, neither tempts he any man kind of idea. And some of this is problematic definition of tempt and test. And a lot of times tempt and test get thrown together and conflated together. And sometimes the words are used interchangeably, sometimes they're not. But I mean, multiple times people would put Yahweh to the test.
We've got pushing, we've got shoving. Sorry.
Wow.
Accidentally.
We are pushing, we got shoving.
I'm
That's
sorry.
what
I'm sorry.
happened on the
Sorry, I
Mount of
accidentally clicked on something. I did not mean to click on that.
But like
trying to get that
going,
smoke alarm back. Anyways, go ahead.
No, I would rather listen to that than the smoke alarm. I'm not going to lie to you at this point. But multiple times in the Old Testament, Yahweh was put to the test by God's people. I mean, he would constantly accuse them of doing that very thing. So I don't know how a Unitarian is going to be consistent with that, because they're just taking James 1 and they're smearing that all over the rest of the Bible as if, well, because Jesus was tempted in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, Matthew 4, Luke 4. Therefore, Jesus cannot be God because Jesus was tempted and God can't be tempted. Meanwhile, we go to the Old Testament and God's people tempted and tested and put him to the test all the time. So, I mean, again, there is a level of understanding where testing and tempting are different. And James actually makes both calls in chapter 1. He actually utilizes test and tempt back and forth in that situation. So I think it's taking James 1 completely out of context and actually being delusional with it and missing the whole entire point of James.
Okay. Thank you. And when it comes to, I don't know if I could ask another question or not, or whether y'all are running over time. Can I? Or
you can ask because you're the last caller we'll take. I see somebody, Dirk Jensen, just joined, but we're gonna
Dirk Jensen. Is that a pun on Darth Darkins?
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
But go ahead and ask your question.
So I evangelize like every day. I got like gospel tracks. My room's a little messy. I kind of live in the hood, but I got gospel tracks and everything. And I talk to JWs. And have y'all ever like evangelized the JWs? Because they're pretty hard-headed people. And the thing is, they believe that Jesus Christ is God, but he's like a lesser God, and it's in the same way that Satan is basically a lesser God. Like they would use like chapters like, hey, like Moses says like God of gods, therefore like there's lesser gods and stuff like that. And Satan is the god of this world. So how would you combat
that?
Pardon me?
Combat that? Yeah.
Yes, combat that.
Yeah. So here's one thing that I'll say first of all is the more sophisticated JW is going to hold to something that they would call like angelomorphic Christology. The basic idea is like they're going to think that Christ is like an angel or something like that.
Saint Michael.
Yeah. And so there's a very sophisticated way to combat this. One that I probably wouldn't be able to explicate here, but you can look forward to a video that'll be coming out this month where I talk about something called the two powers in heaven. If you want a book in the meantime, you should look up a book. It's titled hold on, I gotta find it again. I think it's called Israel's Lord.
Now that he's searching for this, could I shout out my church that sends out missionaries, if that's allowed?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
All right. Everybody visit CIBC Clarkston International. That's where I go to church at. We send out tons of missionaries. Support Grayson Schaffner. You know, that's my best friend who's currently like in Africa. Anybody wants the link, you can just like email me at like mjwturner1695@gmail.com. But
the book I was gonna reference for you here, I put it in the side chat. It's called Israel's Lord, Yahweh as Two Powers in Second Temple Literature. I would say the paperback is the cheaper option. It's gonna be $40, but it's a must read, I would argue. It's a really good book that kind of explains all of this in some really good detail, and you'll see exactly how it's directly relevant to talking to JWs.
And if you're talking to JWs about the deity of Christ and different stuff like this, I just reached back for this book, Incarnate Christ and His Critics by Robert Bowman and Ed Komaszewski.
Could you put that in the chat as well?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I can do it while you talk, Eric.
Yeah, okay. But basically, they have an easier, like, kind of more basic version of it called Putting Jesus in His Place. But this is kind of more the academic version, and they do deal with a lot of JW arguments and even call out some other scholars by name. And so the one thing that Jehovah's Witnesses are going to do is as soon as you refute one argument, they're just going to do the JW shuffle and go to something else. And so it's going to be, this is like a really complete book that deals with a ton of Unitarian arguments. And I would say like, it's like $40 or something, but it's worth triple than that, you know, like it's super valuable. So I would definitely get a copy of it.
Okay, most definitely. A lot of times when I deal with the JWs, because I've been following the cult for years, like combating the cult, because I think like they're the most dangerous cult because they actually kill people. They actually kill people by telling them not to get blood transplants.
Yeah.
And like a lot of them say like it's a choice, but if you're a child of a JW and you need a blood transplant, it's not a choice. You're gonna die. Like
a very weird reading of I think Leviticus. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't. And I tell them like Leviticus is talking about animal blood. I mean, it's so crazy. It's like
No, I get it, man. I would definitely check out the sources that we gave you there. It'll be really helpful. And we'll probably do a Jesus is God call-in stream in the near future too. So if you want to really like cover those objections and topics too, definitely come in on that stream too.
Oh yeah. And here's a video like idea for y'all, because like I don't know if you want to deep dive into the theory that the Apostle John was like the cousin of Jesus Christ, but like I personally think like Sophie was the mother of John, and that's why John personally like was given authority with Mary, because but you could cover that theory, or I could elaborate furthermore on that. But there's so much stuff I want to talk to y'all about. I'm just so unprepared.
Like I said, we're at the tail end, man. So
all right.
Hopefully those two sources will be helpful for you. We'll talk to you next time. All right.
All right. I'm about to go to sleep. CIBC Clarkston International. Bye.
All right. We did it, guys. How are you feeling?
Tired.
Also tired.
But I was tired before the stream, so that's not even fair.
I was too.
Yeah. I keep
thank you for coming, Eric and Steven. Everybody, make sure you go sub to their channel, or else I will make a video proving Islam is true.
It's impossible, buddy.
I will debunk the Islamic dilemma.
You will take the 7 Ajwa date challenge and drink the antifreeze like Junior. Did you see that? This debate with he said right on live he would eat 7 dates and drink poison to prove Islam is true. And David's like, Junior, don't do that. I'm not telling you to do that. If you do that, you will die. He's like, I'll do it. Anyways, it was good
My
times.
gosh.
It was good times.
All
I'm
right.
glad he's the
Well,
new face of Dawa. Anyways, moving on.
I actually really like Junior. I really do like him. I have a soft spot for him.
He's kind of a nice guy. It's just you feel bad
Yeah.
for him.
I do too. All right, guys. Thank you everybody for joining in for the stream. If you are up at 8 o'clock Central Time in the morning tomorrow, come to the Inspiring Philosophy Academy channel. We will be live going over some nerd stuff, going over a model of the Trinity to help you guys make sense of the conciliar statements without contradiction. It's going to be metaphysics stuff, but it'll be really fun. I promise it will be helpful for you. Until next time, everybody.
Oh, did we get the super chats?
Oh, do we have more?
Yeah, you have a few more, don't you?
Do we? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm trying to save you. I don't want you to get an angry email saying
No.
Mike would have come after all of us. Thanks.
Yeah,
I know. Okay. Also,
Sorry.
is it always best to start from... No, thank you for telling me. Also, is it always best to start from an agnostic standpoint to make the foundation of the theistic view, then transition more into Christianity being more plausible compared to other concepts? No. It's okay to start as a Christian and then assess the data with that prior belief. You don't have to like make yourself an agnostic. That is a stupid lie from gaslighting YouTube skeptics that people need to stop believing. And if I sound like a jerk right now, it's because I'm so sick of telling people to stop getting gaslit by YouTube skeptics. Like, you don't have to like leave the church and become agnostic in order to be an honest believer.
Right.
So I know you're not maybe thinking about it that way, Constant and Nipple, but a lot of people think about it that way. So that's why I'm answering that way. I don't know if you guys have any.
Amen.
I agree.
Yesterday, Mike asked me if I was a Muslim because I said Than was handsome. Extreme. You hurt my feelings. Wait, Steven, I don't know if you have the context to this. Do you know? Did you know that Muslims made a website and a video about me being gay?
Wait,
are you serious?
Yeah, because they took screenshots of, you know how guys do like homosexual humor, like they flirt with each other and stuff.
What
They
did
took
you do?
screenshots of jokes, just normal jokes like that with dudes, and then they took pictures of my wife touching my butt and other pictures of me on dates with my wife.
They cropped her hand out and said it was a dude's
her hand. Then it's my wife is cropped out of the picture. All you see is a hand on my butt,
even though it clearly has a wedding band on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh my
basically, I'm
goodness.
gay because my wife
They're
touches
just
my
mad
butt
because their prophet had his encounter with the men of El Zut. They just have.
So anyway, that's the context to some
Oh
of
my
these
goodness.
these
Wow.
things. So it's really
Wow.
funny. They also took a picture because in our Discord server we have a bodybuilding side chat. Okay,
Mm.
and so if you don't know anything about bodybuilding, there's something called a hamstring pose. And so I did a goofy rendition of it where I'm just showing my face between my legs as I'm like flexing my hamstrings. But because these guys are stupid, they think it's me like showing like twerking for people rather than, just reading the content. Anyway, you get the point. So I'm gay. That's
You might want to stay off social media for a while. No,
I don't really care.
It doesn't shock me though that they do stuff like that though. Like we're not going to attack the arguments. We're not going to get into the we're not going to get into the content. We're actually not going to talk about the Quran. We're going to talk about the Bible. We're just going to do that instead because that's the only thing we've got left.
Yeah, nobody's touched my Bayesian Islamic dilemma yet, but they made a video saying that I'm gay.
Deus fault.
Math hard, Than gay.
They just want to look at my aura. Agrippa's trilemma has to be the most retarded trilemma I have ever come across. It self-refutes its own position. Man, it's been a long time since I've thought about that.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's basically a philosophical trilemma saying like you can't really justify knowledge. Nerd stuff. Don't worry. Looking forward to Than's videos on miracles. Also, AI says if miracles are possible, the resurrection is most parsimonious. I wouldn't trust AI just outright, but based conclusion. The videos on miracles will be very cool. I'm also waiting for a few things to happen before I make those videos. There's a few key players I want to work with on this, but I'll keep it at that. Haha, more super chats for a longer stream. JK, get some rest. God bless you. Thank you, Cosine. I appreciate you, brother. All right. Now we can
He's
say
probably
good
right.
night.
He also said in the regular chat, Than said, I'm gay. Someone's going to clip that. So you might want to be ready for that, boss.
Dude, I don't, Stephen.
It's
I don't
coming.
care. I don't care.
Deus Vult.
Because here's the counter question, Stephen, right? Why are so many supposedly like masculine and super straight Muslim men making websites and videos and doing streams all looking at pictures of my butt whilst calling me gay?
Who's really gay?
And then
right?
justifying looking at my butt and saying it's not sinful for them to look at my aura.
Hey, man, I don't know. Do we need to get into DL Kabi and the Zoot and?
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, it's not just that. There's other
scraping of
hadith
the semen
even
on
of, like,
Muhammad's garments. Yeah,
there's other hadith too of like Muhammad
so much
like
projection.
kissing a man's nipples and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite. Take your
Sorry, man. If I'm
retaliation.
actually gay, I would like. Anyway, yeah, that's the story, Stephen.
My
If
God.
Than was gay, he'd be taking his shahada right now.
All right,
Is that too
we're
harsh?
tired. We're gonna go to bed.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
You made it to the end of this video, which means this message matters to you. If you want to see more content like this reaching people for Christ, you can help make it happen. Your support makes these videos possible. Click the link below and donate today. And if you want to go even deeper, consider joining our Patreon community. You'll get early access to videos, behind-the-scenes content, and a place to connect with others passionate about this mission.